The Horizon series is truly in a league of its own, and took the racing series by storm. Introduced during a time where racing games have become incredibly stale, newly formed Playground Studios and Microsoft have decided to create something that aims for a casual audience to grab more people into the series. The motorsport games for the 360 were already very successful and easily at their highest point in the franchise quality-wise, but Microsoft wanted to take things a step further and surprise everyone at E3 with a new spin-off title to shake things up. Forza Horizon, an open-world, full-on arcade twist to the established formula, using a festival event similar to actual motorsport events and festivals, and most likely also inspired to games like Need for Speed Pro Street. The first game had you working through the ranks, or wristbands rather, to become the Horizon champion in Colorado, and went on to do so in the second game, this time in France and Italy. Horizon 3 then changed things up to the progression formula and probably brought in the most new changes, putting you in the seat of the boss of the festival, deciding on what races will be hosted, what music will be chosen, and so on. It was my personal favorite in the series and still probably is. It also gave us, which is, in my book at least, one of the best DLC expansions of the last generation, the Hot Wheels DLC. Sadly, it's now gone and delisted. 2 years later and we get to Horizon 4, which is not bad but not my personal favorite. While on paper the biggest, most diverse, most optimized and best title gameplay wise, it didn't add too many new additions for me to seriously wow me and keep me hooked for long like Horizon 3 did. The biggest new feature, the seasons, were a cool idea that got a little annoying after a while since nobody really liked driving in the snow. And Blizzard Mountain already introduced snow as a gameplay feature almost 2 years before. But it did have the biggest colors with the longest running post-launch support of any Forza to date, which I'll give this game props for. And now we've arrived to today, Forza Horizon 5. 4 years later after 4, we have now gotten, again, the biggest installment to date with the biggest map, most changes in gameplay and variety of content, as a successor usually should. What's interesting about this one is there didn't seem to be a major standout feature that was advertised like in the last game. This time they merely focused on gameplay, features, content, and making sure the game launches on any platform that isn't hosted by Microsoft or Valve day one, to make sure as many people as possible can experience it immediately. And so they did. Horizon 5 was the biggest launch ever for the series. Many influencers and review outlets giving perfect or near perfect scores, nothing but praise. The visuals, vibe, accessibility, and gameplay got everybody, even non-racing fans, to finally give Forza a shot. I mean, how could you not with these game press offers over here? But as a kind of veteran in the series, at least someone who has been around since Forza Motorsport 3 on the 360 and why not an expert, has put their fair share of hundreds of hours into these games, how does it hold up compared to what came before? Are the scores completely justified? Or is there more that the casual reviewers and non-variants usually ignore or leave out that can bring the rating down a little? I can say that Horizon 5 is good, but there's more to it than that, including some really ugly sides and oversights that I want to gloss over in this review. The introduction is very similar to the previous games, but this time out of a cargo plane. You get jumped right into the experience. Get used to the car and its controls, experience the stunning vistas the game got in store for you this time. I love this sequence. It's completely over the top and shows you some of the best places and features right out of the gate. It tells you this is all what you're gonna experience, and more on top of that. It's gonna be a wild ride. Once you arrive at the festival, you create your own character and get introduced to some of the other characters in the game. Also, you will find out that you're actually some sort of superstar that the people have been apparently waiting for. So no, you're the CEO or the underdog having to prove himself storyline here. As you will soon realize, since the characters are bilingual, they have the classic trope of just randomly throwing words of their main language into their English sentences just to sound cooler. I usually do it if I struggle to find the right word in the language I'm currently speaking in, but do people really talk like this?
Wait, is it that way? Sí, ¿dónde está? It's this way. Vámonos!
I have so much to show you. Cerros, desiertos, la jungla, pirámides.
Shut up, bitches!
And then you get to choose your car. And this is what I personally have a problem with. The selection is way too powerful for the start of the game. I always liked how in previous titles from the 360 era, you wouldn't immediately start your career in a sports car and had to work your way up to the better ones. I know that wouldn't keep the attention of non-racing Game Pass players for long, especially since there's now so many, but I feel little accomplishment with Horizon's modern way of progression, especially since you get all three of them later anyway. But that's not it. For every Forza game you previously just played, Horizon 1 and onwards, you now get the cover car for. They did this before, I know, but it just adds to what I was saying, even though it took them a little over a week for them to recognize that I actually played Motorsport 5, as they should, since that's the worst one. Need for Speed Most Wanted, in my opinion, pulled this off really well, letting you experience the feeling of driving some of the fastest cars in the game, taking the car away from you and then working your way up through the ranks to get to that point, to take what was rightfully yours. I know this kind of story wouldn't make sense in a Horizon game, but the series didn't shy away from something based on that before. Moving on, after that's all done, you get prompted to do your first showcase event, a cargo plane, and later people on bikes. Probably the best variation of a plane event since Horizon 2's Fast and Furious. I mostly accepted the fact that they're all scripted now and always end in a very close win. After all, it's a showcase, to put on a show. We all know that a cargo plane could fly in a mostly straight line and get to the finish line way quicker. Afterwards, you'll unlock your first races and access to the festival side. And first I wanna say, the festival sides are probably the best we've ever gotten in the series. They're big, vibrant, have a lot of roads, and some of them even have their own racetracks in them. I personally couldn't ask for more. Stellar work on these, honestly. The entire map itself is easily the most diverse, location and elevation wise. The southern areas are familiar to what you've seen before, long roads with small towns and some airstrips here and there, but the northern parts are where it really shines. They play a lot more with elevation there. It includes an entire city, a stadium in the middle, the beach on the left, and my favorite location further right of the beach, La Gran Caldera. An entire volcano you can drive up to and downwards from, including some of the best roads and places for off-roading, technical racing and drifting in Forza history. It makes sense why the festival site at that location is the last one listed in the progression list. I love it over there. While Horizon 3 definitely hit the peak in visual variety, it had a lot of roads that were more tailored towards high-speed driving on flat roads. But it had the best city though. Another new addition are the extreme weather conditions, tropical and sandstorms. The latter I've only experienced in the intro, shortly in free roam once, and in a scripted mission that includes it. That was it. Never in an actual race. The tropical storms are more common however, and have occurred every now and then during free roam, and during some circuited street races. Nice to have, but nothing groundbreaking. Probably my most favorite part about the whole map is off-roading it. The already mentioned volcano, wild fields and sand dunes make for a ton of high-speed cross-country driving. I've never had more fun just going off the road in a Horizon game. The map offers the usual activities you've come to know mostly. All the race types, barn finds, PR stunts. A new PR stunt however is the Trailblazer. A short time trial to get from point A to B in whatever way as fast as possible. Mostly off-road. There's also one that goes for a few minutes from the volcano to the complete other side of the map. Pretty cool. Yeah, that sums up Forza's difficulty quite nicely. And so you progress through the game. Complete events, PR stunts and other challenges that earn you accolade points. Accolades are a new feature in the game. It's sort of a challenge system for completionists. You get them for doing or finishing pretty much anything. From story missions, races, PR stunts, online events, map discovery and so much more. There's a ton of them, many of them handing you points and sometimes some commands for Forza Link, which I admittedly never used myself, and cars as well. Sometimes regular ones, sometimes even exclusive ones you can only earn through that accolade or other few special weights. It's pretty much a completionist stream. Luckily there's no complete all accolades achievement or me and Playground would have had a serious problem. I would have kicked in their door in like this.
Oh my fucking...
With those points you unlock new chapters. Either expeditions, side stories, yes they actually make a return here, showcases or finale races. Goyas, Titans and so on. Expeditions are, well as the name says, expeditions. You most of the time follow your new friends into a new area that you want to set an outpost in, explore the landscape, complete side objectives for more accolades along the way, and help them set up the festival by being there. And then reap the rewards. Sometimes a cool new vehicle, sometimes a fashionable chicken suit. My favorite expedition was, by far, the one near the volcano. It comes at no surprise at this point, I know. It starts with a rally section up the volcano with a following helicopter, some exploration on top, and a fast downhill section along with interfering in an ongoing race on a Horizon dirt track. It's absolutely crazy and I loved it. Side stories are what you mostly known already from Horizon 4. Bucket lists with a bit of dialogue added to them. They're mostly pretty easy and involve basic tasks like get to the destination in time, beat that skills target, get there without leaving the main road, even though you can cheat a lot of these missions very easily.
You won, but that was much closer than we thought it would be, no?
Yeah, sure.
Muchas gracias, my...
It's like they're not even trying. And when they do try, the attempts are pretty pathetic. Do them mostly for the exclusive vehicles they give you. Then there's the showcases. They're solid all around but nothing out of the ordinary except for one. And there's only 4 of them this time. I already spoke on the first one, the other ones... well, we've had train races before. The jet ski event was nice but very reminiscent of the speedboat event from Horizon 3. But the last one is truly special. You race against 2 Hot Wheels monster trucks in your Ford off-roader. The routes are still scripted for the AI. It honestly feels like a chase sequence out of a GTA game sometimes. But the route itself is really fun to drive on. And once you win, you actually get to be in the seat of one of those trucks and put on a show in the stadium. A neat idea and a successful execution in my opinion. While you never really have to complete all of these events in order to reach the finale and quote-unquote ending of the game, you do need to at least unlock them to progress to the next level. And it's not new that Horizon doesn't have a clear-cut you did it roll credits type of ending anymore since 4, but I have to admit that it kind of feels like nothing for all the major events to just eventually unlock and sit there whenever you want to do them, or not do them at all if you want to. I wonder if you can finish the game just by 3-starring PR stunts. Then you get inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is like the most anticlimactic finale to a Forza game ever. All it really does is add you to a leaderboard and give you a ton more accolades with some exclusive rewards in them. I guess I can't expect a huge fanfare after I've been constantly applauded for doing anything in this game. Now there's one more aspect I'd actually like to go more into detail about which has to do with the races. The AI. The bots in this game are a lot harder to drive against, which is a good thing, especially since they were so bad in Horizon 4. My personal problem is how they've done it, especially on the hardest difficulties like Unbeatable or Pro. You see, the AI usually bases their performance level and PI based on your car, right? Or so it seems. Completely forget the PI levels. No matter how your car performs, the AI will pull more out of their car's performance than you do, whenever they will, no matter the PI. There's one race in particular that I always like to test, because it shows the tricks and cheats behind the AI the best. Perfect cornering, like almost going full speed around them while I need to constantly shift down hoping that I don't drastically understeer. Ridiculous starts and acceleration regardless of drivetrain. And of course that occasional driver or two that just goes off in the distance and smokes everyone else for no explicable reason. I tested this with a Centenario and it was ridiculous. I get that some level of cheating is probably necessary to make a difficulty as ridiculously called as unbeatable to make it actually seem unbeatable, but it's even awful on Pro sometimes. Circuit races or cross-country races with a lot of corners are its biggest culprits. Or drag races. Just look at this shit and tell me what I'm doing wrong. You can just barely win this event by abusing slipstream, which is normally not used in a drag race, or by using a ludicrously fast drag tune even the AI couldn't replicate. They're also very inconsistent. They're still way too slow on regular dirt events and just absolutely suck in street race events, especially the ones in the city. They also seem to not really get along with the Desert Dingo Volkswagen. It's nice that they made driving generally feel heavier to make cornering more challenging and making rear-wheel drive more forgiving, but the former at least should still apply to the AI drivers. Before I move on to seasonal content and online, cause those are in a whole different league on its own, let's talk customization real quick. Performance and fine-tuning is already very reminiscent of older titles, but with new additions. Engine swaps are of course back, but with better and more noticeable engine sounds this time. New body kits and parts in general have been added. New tire compounds like the semi-slicks or more transmission upgrades as well to give you extra gears if you really need them. One thing I noticed that was missing was Rocket Bunny. You will realize it once you get to the BRC or RX-7. The livery editor has undergone an overhaul. It's easier to use now since control layout has changed. There's also a few new shape categories and fonts, but nothing spectacular. The Need for Speed editor, with its incredible accessibility and amount of decals, still reigns supreme among all racing games in my opinion. And it's actually the only game out of all where I really spent my time to do my own liveries. In Forza I was still only doing it once just to try it out, along with player created decals as well. So nothing I created was truly still original like in Need for Speed. Customization also carries over in the context of events, with the Event Lab system. Here you can completely tailor the settings to your specific rules. It's basically the evolved version of the Horizon Blueprint feature introduced in Horizon 3. You have your basic settings like time of day, max amount of driver tasks, lock cameras and more. And then there's the rules of play. This is where you really go into detail and basically even create whole new event types. Understanding it would definitely take a while though. While I've yet to create something that is actually game changing, I saw what others were able to accomplish, including an event where, depending on your placement, you get a certain amount of points. The more points you have earned and closer to the target you are, the more your torque decreases, basically having you defend as many positions as possible while being slower than the ones below you. Interesting stuff. There was even a seasonal event in where you had to earn points by getting the fastest sectors from checkpoint to checkpoint. So there's really some possibility for completely new game types here. On top of that, there's also the prop editor. Yeah, seriously. It's no Trackmania, GTA Stunt Creator or even Dirt 5's Arena editor for that matter, but I'll say it has a solid foundation. There's more props to choose than you first expect. Probably more for set dressing than actual track props though. I'd like to see more corner objects of different sizes and degrees, so I don't have to do something ugly looking like this. Also maybe some props without any framework attached to it, of different sizes. Features I'd like to see is a snap or connect function, as it's sometimes hard to see how one object aligns up with another, especially since you can't move the camera with your mouse like in Trackmania. In fact, the mouse has no use in this editor at all. Controlling everything, at least on mouse and keyboard, mostly works through the numpad for whatever reason. I highly recommend you use a controller for this editor. Also give us an option to remove props in the game world. Can be annoying if you want to play something only for it to clip through a random object that could be getting rid of. Despite the lack of more complex features you'd expect in a modern map creator, I think this is something they could build on. There's some really good stuff you can do with it. Definitely anything better than I could create. Also on a quick note, make sure when you finally test your race, you're also ready to publish it. Because as of now there seems to be no way to just save and exit, then to go back to your event later to continue editing it. I learned that the hard way after spending hours in the creator. In terms of festival playlists, not much has changed. You still get a set of challenges and activities every other week with every season change. PR stunts, this time with vehicle requirements and PI, championships, the trial, playground events, the usual. This time you get an exact number of points shown to you for every activity, rather than a somewhat vague percentage stat. A big improvement. You can win rare or even exclusive cards to the festival players after reaching enough points for both the current and all seasons combined. Unfortunately I couldn't get my hands on the DeLorean while it was available, because I had a lot of personal stuff to deal with during the week. Luckily the auctioneers always got me right. Oh. Well, never mind. I love live services and their formal practices. Newly integrated are the Eliminator and Horizon Co-op events. Horizon Co-op is essentially the trial with extra dialogue between races and changing it from best of 3 to finishing every single race. So, what's the point? Then there's the Eliminator, a battle royale mode that was already introduced in Horizon 4 post-release. You choose a random location, look for vehicles near landmarks and buildings as they say. The drop locations are very spaced out though. My recommendation is to just look for smoke screens in a wide open field. You then look for other players to challenge to a head-to-head. Arrive first at the designated location to eliminate them. After you get your win, you can decide if you want to take their car or a random better one than the one you currently have. And so you challenge and eliminate one after another until the circle closes in and there's one last race with all remaining players determining who wins this event. The one-on-one idea is actually really interesting. It's imperative you choose a fast off-road vehicle, as you were probably not gonna stick to the main road too often and use the open fields as major shortcuts. The number on your car signifies the power and how good it will rack up to the competitor's car, even though my Fiesta should have absolutely smoked that lower level classic Ferrari in the dirt right there. That was way too close. In general, when you don't get stuck looking for a new car at the beginning for minutes, it can be pretty fun. It just feels kind of rushed at this moment. I've encountered a weird button where I couldn't challenge people that were clearly available, maybe also increase the finish line radius for me. I also had this problem where I couldn't secure a car drop near a barn because someone forgot to turn off the gifting feature in the game, which meant the message to gift overlapped my ability to get a new vehicle. How much was this really tested? Aside from the eliminator, there's also the usual playlists, but PvP overall is just rough as of now. First you have the Playground playlist. Get it because the developer's called Playground, which features the typical modes introduced a long time ago, like Infected, Flag Rush or King. Sounds good so far. However, the maps feel like they haven't been properly tested. There is the Stadium map, which has a wheel clipping issue, which tripped me and an opponent over. Another map at an abandoned airstrip has a variation where you could become stuck like this. That was great. Team balancing is also an issue. Once people in your team leave, no one can join you mid-game, even though it works in racing and drifting playlists. Sometimes. In racing you compete against other players in a series of races with set PR requirements and choose an event category. Not much to say here. If you spend most of your time playing on unbeatable or pro in single player, safe to say you'll be well prepared. From what I've played so far it was really fun and challenging, but that was when everything went smoothly. Because other than that I'd have to pray in order to land in a session that wouldn't kick me or leave me out of a race, despite joining it before it even began. Or hit me with endless loading screens. You know, it makes sense why ranked players aren't in this game yet. Because the multiplayer just wasn't ready. At this point just bring back the old server browser system. I think the only time it went smoothly is when I queued for drift events, but I fear that was pure coincidence. But those events are nothing to write home about either. It's as bare bones as it can get. No losing points for crashing or going off the road, no multipliers for drifting on the edge or something daredevil-ish. It's very basic. The entire game feels almost unfinished. The connection issues and dumb oversights I already went over. On top of that I've had issues with whining. Also this. Rebinding makes no sense because default presets apparently don't need a key for everything, like the map button here, but the custom ones apparently do? Seasonal challenges not counting after exceeding its targets. Rooftop collectibles are a joke. Random environmental props and races, even online. The game is overall good looking graphically, but it's not free from visual glitches either. Alpha or smoke effects appear pixelated pretty often from a pretty close distance. The level of detail distance is horribly short and texture popping occurs frequently. And trees and leaves are the worst offense as they appear almost grid-like from a distance. It's really not nice to look at, but hard to show on a YouTube video. Now, this is nothing or just major nitpicking when you look at everything else that released around the same time frame. But that doesn't mean these issues can go unnoticed. The game also received an 18GB patch, which, wow, apparently it did break a lot more stuff. Most of it seems to be happening on serious consoles, at least from what I've read and from my short experience on PC. But frequent crashing, extremely long loading times, skybox glitches that accidentally turn on that cliché Mexico film filter, and other lighting and contrast issues. It's great that they're already going all out on the DLC cast despite the rough state the game is released in. Honestly thought we'd be leaving all this DLC stuff behind after Horizon 4. But hey, at least the Horizon Arcade scales its goal targets properly now. That's great. Horizon 5 is a bit of a mixed bag for me. It's a good racer in itself, a very good one at that. However, almost everything it gets right here I've seen before in the series in some shape or form. There's a reason I haven't praised every single aspect it gets right because the last installment have done so before. I look at what it all has to offer and think to myself, yeah, been there, done that. As a more experienced player, it doesn't wow me as much as it did for the newcomers or review outlets. The latter shouldn't surprise me though, as they gave every Forza near perfect scores regardless of quality. If you never played the Horizon series before and want to try your hand at racing games, Horizon 5 is a spectacular entry point. Just not at this state in the game. The amount of new features, at least for you, The world, colors and so on would blow you away. I would just suggest you wait before you buy it or really take up on the super dirt cheap Game Pass offers Microsoft frequently puts out. For myself, I don't see much more than a visual and physics wise upgrade from Horizon 4, and after now 5 installments, I expected a little more change. More event types, a harder focus on progression, better online features, take Motorsport 4 Horizon 1 as a reference for example, maybe approach map design differently, work more with cityscapes, and less long open roads with mini cities in between. Take elevation to the next level with more mountain areas and twisty roads. I wonder what place could provide all that though. Now look, I know that Japan isn't a perfect place and how funny it is to make fun of people who perceive it as one. Just like how Mexico, Britain, Australia, France or Italy, or even the United States isn't. But it would provide the necessary change the franchise needed. A highly requested location, with plenty of beautiful vistas, much variety in road structure, strong car and tuner culture of course, and having the opportunity to give the drifting community what they actually really wanted. I think the only problem we'd face is how off-roading works, as they are off-road trails and tracks. Just check out some of the footage of the Rally Hokkaido for example. There may not be as many wide open fields though, but that shouldn't be a problem for Playground as they'll happily put Byron Bay and the Outback on the same map and make them a 15 to 20 kilometer drive from one another. I think the biggest reason why we haven't been there yet is because they want to make it right. Focusing on bigger, denser cities could be a problem for this now 8-year-old shitbox. For now however, I'm actually quite hopeful about what the future holds for this game. Horizon 6 at this point is probably years away, especially with Playground also working on a Fable reboot. Right now, focus on fixing its bugs and glitches, especially the online service, and don't mess it up in regards to expansion packs. I'll definitely take a look at those once they roll around. If you're a newcomer, you're probably blown away by its content, visuals, fleet of vehicles and gameplay. A must buy for you, even though I would wait a little till they iron out the issues. As an experienced Forza player, it's a little more difficult. If you love everything Forza, you still can't go wrong with this one. If you've grown a little tired of the formula though, this isn't anything too different. Forza tries to have everything. The cars, the visuals, the tuning, the track creation, the best online, the huge map, the driving satisfaction. But it only really nails that last aspect of it. And that's okay. But then I'd like to understand the perfect or near perfect scores the game has been getting, cause it's clearly unreasonable. I've seen everything there is to do and I'm already at the I only check into the game to get the new seasonal cars then clock out syndrome I've had for the longest in Horizon 4. The actual drive to play actively just really isn't there. Sorry for that terrible pun. Here's hoping with the next gen Forza engine, a completely new location people are actually asking for, and finally leaving the Xbox One behind, they can truly bring something to the table that feels like a significant step up, and totally different.